Hi to me yet.
I did. I said hi when you walked in.
Did you?
Did you ask her if that was her pen?
No, because she hadn't been in yet.
What?
It's your pen. See? Yeah. Yeah.
Got to stay on the good side of the newspaper.
Your pen instead of accusing somebody of, is this your pen?
Well,
Your pen.
you see how he's got flashy pens? I mean, it's
By the way,
it's
we're
not
meeting
that,
on a Wednesday.
It's not that far.
It's a Wednesday today. You got that?
It's not the 9th, however.
No.
It's definitely not the 9th.
I'm not escaping into the night.
It's the 13th.
Well, I know it's the 13th.
Well,
you wouldn't know it.
You wouldn't know that if you looked at the
Agenda
front of the
says
agenda.
This is, oh, wow, yeah. Oh, Lord. I'll tell you about it later. Melissa knows what I'm referring to.
All right, let's call this meeting in order. All right, so we have no fifth. I don't really know how to say it other than that. Other than that, everyone's here. So this is the open forum time. It's time for anybody to come up. I see a couple people on the. Do you have anything you want to say in open forum? Okay, very cool. Anybody else? Open forum. Okay, hearing nothing, we'll close the open forum, move on to consent agenda. Nothing special for the consent agenda, just this meeting's agenda, the previous meeting minutes, and the bills for the past 2 weeks.
I so move that we approve the consent
There's a
agenda.
motion, is there a second? Motion and a second, any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Yeah, everybody. All right, carries. Moving on to the planning commission report. So we have 2 items on the planning commission report. One is a conditional use permit for 115 First Avenue West. Let's see if I can get to the page here, to the right page. Yep, there we go. So that is in the mixed use commercial residential zone, and the request is for a conditional use for a short-term rental on that, which is allowed via conditional use. So, Tim, do you have any further discussion on this? This is something that they're requesting this in conjunction, like, or as an item in the sale of the
I
property.
have a question on that. Can I add?
Oh, go ahead, if you have a question.
So, one party is requesting the conditional use permit,
Yes.
but then they're going to turn around and sell it to another party.
Yes.
They want guarantees on whether or not they can actually.
Well, the sale may or may not go through, so they requested the conditional use permit. It's just disclosure that they're intending to sell it, but it may not, and if they don't, they want to be able to sell it to someone else with that same conditional use. Same
Why wouldn't the
conditions.
person who's going to actually use it be the person that applies for it?
It's happens that the current owner applies, that a potential purchaser applies. Either way, it's really not. I mean, in this case, the person that's applying that still owns it, that's actually more common, I'd say, than the other way around.
Because they want assurances, they want to be able to show that the property is going to be able to be used for that use, so that.
Well, if
They sell it
if they
to-
meet the conditions, they do, but what if they sell it and something were to change where they were not following some of the conditions of something, then what happens?
Then the
That's a
permit
different conversation.
wouldn't
Yeah.
be valid anymore.
The reason why the applicant is the owner is because they're the ones that have the vested interest in the property, and somebody else just doesn't have any
Right,
position to make an
because the
application.
potential buyer
Could
really
be-
doesn't want it unless they know that this
Right,
is in
they-
place.
Tomorrow they could be gone and have no relationship to that property at all, so you don't, the action is granted to the owner of the property, and it's filed against the property. So,
We do have cases where a purchaser will be the applicant,
Yep,
and more often than not, then the current owner doesn't really have any intention of going that direction if they don't sell it.
okay.
In this case, the current owner has said, we do want to have this permission even if the sale doesn't go through.
Okay,
So that's why it's appropriate.
and
Okay.
the conditional use permit is transferable, so it does go to subsequent owners as long as they abide by the conditions.
okay. That was it just struck me funny,
Yeah.
so.
So you have the map of the property. It's on First Avenue West, just up above, well, below Maruska's old office, below Thomas's
Mr. Thomas's
Thomas's
house.
house. Yep. It's that newer home that was built in there a couple years ago.
So the one of the items that was brought up on there saying, you know, they had to make sure that they had the right off-street parking. And so there's a one-car garage. Does that require 2 stalls?
No, and here's what the planning commission talked about with regard to the parking issue. First, that the applicant is intending to convert that garage into a residence as part of the entire home. Right now, there's in the main home a regular-sized bedroom and a very small bedroom that only would accommodate a single bed, so a single person. They want to remodel the garage into another residence with sewer and water connection to it, so they would end up with basically a capacity of 5 or maybe 6 people in the whole house. The parking would be off the alley in that area that's highlighted on the map.
And there's enough room.
And there'd be
there
enough
for-
room to accommodate two spaces.
Is
with-
that truly a usable alley?
It is. You can. I mean, in fact,
It's better than some.
the
I know that
the
the
ho-
bell.
if you look at the color
Bell.
photo that you have, the home that's located off the alley, that's their only access, is to come through the alley, which is just south of the chiropractic office, and then turn into that. And then this alley does go all the way through. It's a little steep when you get up to the top, but down here where it comes into this area, the area where the parking would be.
That parking lot down below, though, is private property, right? They just allow people to
No,
use
there's
it?
there's an alley that goes in to access that.
Oh,
There's
okay.
it's one of
It's a
those,
goofy
it's one of
thing.
those T alleys that
Got it.
exists in
Okay.
town, so it's a legal access.
Okay,
And that is the only access for that home. That we wouldn't have allowed it if they didn't have a legal access.
okay.
So the planning commission felt strongly that requiring the parking spaces was, essential to dealing with the parking issues and the consistency in how we've discussed and permitted other single unit lodging facilities, so. After considerable discussion, the planning commission did recommend unanimously approval of the request.
Okay. In that thorough discussion, did the Planning and Zoning Commission by any chance have more discussion about vacation rentals, like the presence of vacation rentals in the community? Or does the Planning and Zoning Commission feel pretty strongly that the conditional use for vacation rentals in the mixed-use zone is the intended use of that zone?
Yeah, we didn't really talk about that because we felt like we had settled that issue when we dealt with the R1 and the R2 districts and reaffirmed the residential nature of those and the fact that the mixed-use district was this transition district that we recognize as being part commercial, part residential, and as such, yeah, this is the planning commission recommendations on that.
Yeah.
So,
These are the recommendations?
Yeah.
Isn't this what was in our packet?
No, it wasn't.
No, it wasn't. So I
actually.
grabbed this one. It's got the findings and the conditions that were attached to it.
But we did have a conversation, in addition to just talking about this, about the whole issue of lodging that we took up as a separate issue with regard to potentially amending the ordinance, but it really doesn't specific, it wasn't specific to this request or this property. Jay was asking about whether we had talked about vacation rentals or single family or single use rental as a kind of a separate issue in regard to our previous conversation about vacation rentals, and I said we didn't really have that conversation. I mean, that seems to be that seems to be resolved in terms of the fact that the zone district allows for it as a conditional use.
I mean, I think there was some discussion about what a conditional use means. Like, does it mean that we intend for there to be some sort of limit on the number of them? And so there was a little bit of that discussion, and that it's conditional use doesn't really imply any intent like that. It just implies that there are circumstances where it's appropriate, and there are circumstances where it may not be, and there's a series of questions that we need to use to evaluate that. So we just want to take it on a case-by-case basis.
Instead of just saying it's allowed and it's just gonna
Yeah.
happen.
And it isn't a permitted use, so that's, I mean, otherwise it would be a permitted use in that district, you
Right.
know. So when it's a conditional use, we review those on a case-by-case application basis. Yeah, every site is a little bit different, and every, you know, use activity is a little bit different, so,
Then you have the ability to manage the impact a little bit more for those, you know, like with this, you know, the findings say that property will provide 2 off-street parking spaces, will be rented as a single operating unit, and will have a maximum of 6 occupants.
yes.
So those are all gonna be written into the conditional use, and they can't operate it outside of those boundaries.
Who's gonna check it?
Yep. Good
Yeah.
question.
Well, the parking
That's where we
is
struggle.
easy to understand.
Mm-hmm.
The operating it, renting it as a single unit is a little trickier, although it's really not set up to be operated a different way feasibly. The rented to a maximum of 6 occupants, we know how the proposed purchaser manages that, but there's really no feasible way for us to, on a regular basis, be checking that, and we wouldn't intend to.
I guess the only way we could really do it is to check the, you know, check the listing, which is the second level that you were talking about.
Mhm.
Check the listing and see what they say is maximum people, you know, I mean,
Or to make sure that the listing describes the house with that extra bedroom,
Single
bathroom
room.
as it's a single
Yeah.
piece. That would be, that, and that's I'm glad we got these findings, because that was my only real thing, was I wanted to make sure that it wasn't being, like, if they were gonna redevelop that garage, that it wasn't being developed into its own
separate.
individual rentable space, because that
The-
seems a little tight on a 40-foot wide lot to have 2.
The maximum occupants was added as a condition, and it was part of a bigger conversation about, well, I think parking was probably what started the conversation, and how do we determine how many parking spaces we might want to require? And that's really on a situational basis as well. We don't have any sort of statutory or codified guidelines about it in this zone.
Do we have it in other zones?
We do in other zones, but it talks about per unit and we don't really define unit in this context very well. And so we're trying to figure out, all right, well, what would we do to determine how many parking spaces is appropriate? And it seemed like occupants is the obvious place to go.
Mhm.
So if we know that we're going to require them to have 2 spaces, then the commission was comfortable with 6 occupants, given that. And I think that's kind of some guidance that they're still developing. So that's where that came from and how it got
Okay.
in there.
Good conversation.
Okay. So, any further discussion about this?
I'd make a motion to approve.
Okay, there's a motion,
I'll
is there a
second
second? Motion and a second, any further discussion?
With the conditions that
Right.
are
With the conditions as
Recommended.
presented. Yep, so we're talking about, let's get back to the top. Resolution, wait, I know what I'm
22.
saying. Resolution 2018-22? Is that the one? It's not.
These findings, those
Is it actually-
conditions.
No,
I don't
we
think
don't
it
have
is
a
either.
resolution.
I don't think it is
No,
either.
we don't have a resolution.
Okay.
It's on the front of our agenda, 2018-22.
Gotcha. So the resolution is in there. I know I had seen it, but I just wasn't sure. Okay, so we have a motion for 2018-22. Any further discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay, so moving on to the Berner variance. So, we got Tyson, who's gonna come up and walk us through some stuff.
I'm still confused.
so he's going to walk us through some stuff very slowly.
Sure.
So I read through the letter and I read through the email discussion, and I don't know where the. I guess I'm still reading it the same as what we had as a conversation last time, and maybe I'm reading it wrong, but that's just kind of where I was having a hard time following exactly what they were getting at here, you know, as far as, the designs with the actual beams shown in them is helpful, but it also seems like,
Well, I couldn't
Plenty of
separate,
room here.
what's the second design and the final design? I was getting confused looking at those, so I'm wondering which one, I was wondering what of these drawings is actually being turned in for us to approve, and maybe Tyson
So
knows
I
that.
can answer that.
Perfect.
We beat this one up pretty good last time, so I'll try and keep it quick. But the final design, which is the conventional floor system, is the one submitted to the planning and zoning, and that's the one that Mr. Berner would like. Anton pointed out very correctly at the last hearing that, you know, I suggested going to a different floor system instead of 18 inches. Why didn't the building shrink? It looks like you added all the first floor. Well, that's exactly what happened, but let me explain why. The architect has been struggling to meet Mr. Berner's specs, and I would say she has not been able to completely at 31.6, and she certainly can't at 30. The mistake that David made is thinking that in the second design that you're looking at there with a beam and column system, that the bottom of the let me say it differently, that the top of the floor in between the beams was an 11 foot. That's not true. She couldn't fit it in, would meet the rest of the specs, or as close as she comes, 10 foot 4 inches. So what I think happened is, Anton, you pointed out to her that, well, you can save all the space if you go conventional floor system. Why don't you do that? She thinks, well, it's not really what David wants, but it's a good point, so I can meet the project specs. Why don't we do that? And so that's how you go from a 10 foot 4 ceiling to an 11 foot ceiling. So I guess ultimately my point is that under either of the two buildings, the one with the beam and column system, which is what David wanted originally, but doesn't quite meet his project specs, so from a developer's perspective, it's deficient, or under the new system, which meets the specs, but was his less desired outcome, they both require an 18-inch height variance to build.
and what's the why is he so strongly or so adamant about having the 9 foot ceiling on the second floor? I mean, because he's got 8.6 on the third floor. I mean, I honestly asked that because it seems like, you know, if you're going to use the second and third floors for vacation rentals, you know, if you're going to demonstrate that the third floor could work at 8.6, why could the middle one not?
I agree with you completely. I think the best answer to that is you don't want to get too greedy. The smaller you can make it, the better, and if he's going to sacrifice somewhere, he'd rather it be on the top because just a bigger feeling space because of the view you've got. It doesn't mean it's right. I think if one of the things you told him is, look, you know, we like the idea, but we want you to shrink floor 2 by 6 inches because that minimizes the request a little bit, I think he'd be okay with that. But I understand your point. It's a fair point.
Okay, so walk me through this. So I'm going to start at the top of the packet that we got. So, because then we can follow it through. So we know which one we're talking about. The first picture, or the first one that we got, is the conventional floor joist system, and that adds up to 31.6,
Which is final design.
which is final design. So the next one that's down that's the same design, just showing the side cut of it.
When you say
Yes.
the next one down, you talk about the same page?
Same page, yeah.
It doesn't show the pages very well in the PDF that we sent, but yes, it's on the same page.
That's on the same
Oh,
page.
got it.
Yep.
Okay, so that's the same final design.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next one, second design, that is different from the final design.
The difference is the floor structure. Beam and column versus conventional joist.
That this drawing, I think it's included to try and explain what was being explained to us at the
Right.
meeting last time.
Kind of where we were
Yeah, he kept
to where we're
saying,
going.
So the second design, that's where we got the 9.6 on the first floor in the first place.
bingo.
That's what it was offered for, yes.
But I struggle with that too, because I did see one of the designs that had 9.6 on the first floor, and it came to a total of 30. Did I not? Am I making that up?
That's the one that Anton had.
Yes.
Well, there's that, and there's also this one that's on the next page that shows 10 foot on the main floor. I don't know what that line is that's coming through there. That must be his, so he's got 10 foot 10, right? 10 foot 10, 9 foot 10, and he's at 30 feet. So there's no difference in 2 inches of ceiling height. I mean, if they're showing right here that you can do this, you're actually gaining space on the second floor.
The one you're talking about, Anton, is a 2-story building, not a 3-story.
Yeah, that's
That's what he wanted to build originally, but
Well, this
he
has
was,
got this has got,
Changed because of
Different.
the neighbor location.
it's got a different floor plan. I just included the cross section so you could see the progression of the building design for that.
but that's dated 10/18. I mean, that's,
They're all dated 10/18. I think that's a function of Mimar's software. They couldn't print this out, the historical ones. I was frustrated by that. That's why I put the labels on the top right-hand corner. It would have been much easier to say, this is the date on this date, this is the date of this drawing, but they all came 10/18.
well, I guess on that one, it does show a top floor, some sort of roof over that stairwell, which is 8 feet above. I suppose that's 8 feet plus the roof set. Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I thought at the last meeting, though, Anton, you had a drawing
I do have that, yeah.
that showed,
Everyone has it now. It was emailed around.
I didn't get it.
I didn't send it back to you.
I got it.
You sent it to
It's in
me.
her phone.
I got
Sounds
it
like
inside.
everybody's got it
the
except
level
for
of
me.
confusion and looking at multiple things here.
I know.
I'd be happy to go print one out for you if you like.
Yeah, could you?
Yeah.
If we're talking about something I don't have
Okay,
here.
this is the one, okay.
Technology.
So the second design, how does that fall? The second design is what he's saying is the one that's the one he came to us with last time?
That's kind of where he started when he brought this, before we submitted the application, but sometime after he'd started working with me, that was where he was at. And when he drafted his letter that he circulated, he pointed out that it was 9.6 to the bottom of the first floor, which obviously didn't make any sense because he told you here repeatedly he wanted 11-foot ceilings. This is where that mistake comes in.
Boy, I think he's gonna have to. I mean,
Well, he's-
But even in this one, if that's what you're saying, like that one never shows an 11-foot ceiling. That shows 11 foot to the top of the second floor.
And that's the mistake that he made, is that when he read this, he looked at that and said, oh, I've got an 11-foot ceiling. You and I both look at that and say, no, the bottom of the surface that you walk on floor 2 is at 11 feet, not the ceiling on floor 1. And that's in the email that Benaz, I believe the pronunciation is Motlag, but I'm not sure. She points out that, David wants 11 feet. He keeps telling me he wants 11 feet. He's all about 11. 10.4 is all I can give him with this site, with this structure, or excuse me, with this floor system. There's no more space. You either got to take it out of the floors 2 and 3, or you just don't get it.
so we've been able to minimize the floor structure because of the suggestion for conventional floor joist system. So now we've only got a foot to deal with instead of 18 inches for the floors, or like between the floors, right?
Yeah, it sounds like it's 2x10s with floor decking and some sort of ceiling.
Well, here's my question. Do we care what he has in between the floors? He's basically looking for a variance of 18 inches at the
Well,
top,
where I'm
at the end.
going with that is that we've shrunk the floor systems as much as we possibly can. So the only thing that that remains, I suppose I was closer to the wall than I thought I was. The only thing that remains that can squish is the airspace, and I feel very uneasy about a variance in that location of any height, really. And so, I mean, that leads me to conclude that, gosh, he probably is going to have to squish his airspace. And I know that's not what he wants, but the impact of that, taking 6 inches off of the second floor and then a foot off of the first floor, would make this a lot easier for him.
Well, and that's what I mean. Are we here to tell somebody that? He could construct it whatever way if we're saying you can't go over the 30-foot height.
That's the conversation. Yeah, that is the conversation.
I kind of think that's what the conversation has to be. Whatever his design is on floor joists, whether it's beams, whether it's conventional, I don't know that I care that way, but I guess we have to decide whether
Are we going to let him build over
we're
30
going
feet?
to let him go over the 30 feet. And what are the reasonings for going over the 30 feet? To me, that's more the discussion, or am I off?
Right, I mean, we're not here to design his building.
No.
No.
I mean, we're here to
I think we have gotten.
take action on his request to do this specific action. And, I mean, I'm feeling more and more uncomfortable with every rendition of this, just because I don't see the difficulty or hardship that, overrides the ordinance. And, I mean, there's a lot, maybe there's other options for him. I mean, again, I don't have to come up with those options. I mean, I think it's our role to decide whether we're going to approve this or deny it.
Yep.
What's helpful in looking at alternatives like this is you get to explore that idea of reasonableness, which is part of a variance request. And, if you can talk about some alternatives that still seem reasonable, that don't have to go over 30 feet, that,
Well, and
that can lead you to a different
I look
direction.
at what do we have that currently is over 30? Where are they located? What are they doing? The pictures he shared with us, when I look where this one's at, and what would it be blocking behind? There really isn't much of anything for me when I think back of the pictures he gave us, and obviously I drive that roadway every single solitary day because basically I live up the street from it. I look at this compared to, well, East Bay. The Mayhew building is quite tall. We allowed a rooftop bar that is probably
And those-
pretty
The
close.
East Bay did get a variance to put their air conditioning units, but that building itself
the building
was
itself.
30 feet.
Stone Harbor is 30 feet. Both the Gunflint Tavern and the Mayhew Building are right close to 30 feet.
Do we have anything over 30?
The air conditioning units on the East Bay are
They're the
the
only
only
ones.
things that we know.
Okay, so
I
that's
mean,
air
in this
conditioning
zone.
units, not
Right,
building.
there's other buildings that are significantly taller than 30 feet. And the Grand Marais condominiums are probably close to 50 at that peak, so.
Yeah, but they're not the downtown.
Not in the same
Right.
zone, and not at all in the same sort of configuration
Yeah.
of neighbors and other things, yeah.
Okay.
Well, I'm just gonna come out and say it. I feel very uncomfortable with a height variance for the downtown. As Tim was saying, demonstrating a hardship. I don't believe that this necessarily is a hardship. I think this is very specific to what his expectations are, and I think that being flexible with those expectations, has to do with the unique nature of that property itself. So I'm just going to say it. Just said it. So I'm here for more consideration, discussion from you guys, what your thoughts are. Somebody play devil's advocate, maybe. I don't know.
I won't do that, but I'll say that, I mean, I guess I just been a little bit, you know, I mean, in some ways, if I hadn't been asked for any sort of recommendations, I probably would have not caught any of this or just gone, I mean, we generally go ahead with what the planning commission recommends to us. But because of, you know, David asking about this and me offering suggestions, it goes back to that whole thing where until any of this stuff brought up, again, I'm not an engineer, you know, it was just more conversations and trying to help, because I personally felt that project, asking for a variance, I mean, even at 30 feet, that's gonna catch, flack. And I think that once it starts to happen, you know, there's nobody here to talk about it now, because that's just how it works. But as soon as something starts to happen, everybody's gonna, you know, and rightfully so. I mean, it's an important piece of property, with sightlines greater than just straight back off of, you know, right up that kind of alleyway towards between Lonnie's stuff there. And I think my biggest, I don't know, but there's mix-ups, I think, in understanding, and I feel that, again, going back to if this is always supposed to be whatever, without the recommendations, when I had a conversation with the architect, then he shouldn't have come in asking for an 18-inch variance. I understand that's where we're at, is asking for an 18-inch variance, but before I had a conversation with this architect, he needed a 36-inch variance, which I wonder if he would have come in asking for a 3-foot variance if I hadn't offered any guidance and suggestions I'd look at.
He retained me a long time before he talked to you. It's always been 18 inches.
I know, but I know.
He's saying that
that's what I'm saying.
the calculation
if it's
should
always
have
been
been
18 inches, that's why he added a 1.5 feet to the bottom. I mean, that's what I'm saying. I agree. Like, maybe he has always wanted to go with 18 inches, but I, through recommendations, not that they've been engineered out, were able to save that 18 inches. And instead of doing that, or even, you know, I actually said to the architect, it's like, you know, if you figure out, like, actually get this engineered and you need like a 2-inch variance, I mean, like, more than likely, like, that is gonna have a, you know, 1-inch, 2-inch, whatever. But if the way that this was originally drawn, and which wasn't what was proposed and given to the planning commission, they shouldn't have been asking for it. The only reason when they brought it to the planning commission that they still needed an 18-inch variance is because of the suggestions I gave them. If the framing design on the date that the application was submitted, the set of plans that I got the first time I ever heard about this project, if indeed he was honest that it was supposed to be 11 foot always, it's always been 11 feet on the first floor, that doesn't add up to an 18-inch variance, it adds up to a 36-inch variance.
So at any rate, so reconstructing the story, I think, is helpful for us to have some understanding of where we get to. And the bottom line, this, you know, with the plans that we're given right now, with his intentions, you know, I honestly believe that Mr. Berner's intention isn't to be malicious.
No, I don't think so either.
And you know, and I do honestly think that there was some misunderstanding going on there with how it was phrased and how his understanding of the construction goes. So that, you know, that was the conversation we had last time. The conversation we need to have right now is whether or not we feel comfortable with a height variance in the waterfront area. I pretty strongly do not feel comfortable with that. I feel like this building is not going to be unsuccessful being 18 inches shorter. I think that it's going to be exceptionally successful at 30 feet. That's my feeling on it.
And what was the planning, I know the planning commission recommended it. What discussions came out of that and why did they feel it would be okay? Do you remember? You know, we're going back
Well,
now.
you know,
I'm sorry.
A lot of the discussion, you know, with the exception of the information that Anton had provided at the city council meeting, which I think was all new information to me and wasn't discussed at the planning commission at all. You know, I mean, I think the issues that were talked about at the planning commission meeting were that, you know, he's trying to be a good neighbor and shrink the width of the building in order to accommodate his neighbors and, you know, potentially, you know, minimize any moisture problems between buildings that might have affected his neighbors, which I mean, I think is, you know, good intent. You know, the issue of the view impacts, you know, I think the planning commission felt that they were not that significant just because of the size of the structure that was going to be placed, and just kind of the location and the fact that it was next to a building that was 27, 28 feet tall, that, you know, wasn't going to look that much different or obstruct that much of anybody's view. You know, but again, I think, you know, what's caused me concern is, you know, the conversation that Anton had raised at the last meeting, and, you know, looking at this new design and trying to fit that into, you know, the conversations that we had. And, you know, I feel uncomfortable with it. I mean, I feel that this seems to be moving based on conversations and doesn't seem to be set in any particular way that, you know, it's set to accommodate getting an 18-inch variance. And could the property be utilized and done well as a 30-foot structure? I'm starting to think yes. You know, I mean, you might have to modify the design and expectations, but you know, I'm more and more uncomfortable with it, and more likely to support not granting a variance.
Any other thoughts? Any other conversation on this? So as I see it, there's a number of ways we can deal with this. There could be a motion to deny. There could be a motion to accept that could die with the lack of a second. And those would probably be the two most appropriate in order. And then third would just be not to take any action on it, which is probably the worst thing to do, which would be not really a decision in any.
Well,
You have to take action on it.
If we don't take
Okay,
action,
good.
then he gets.
You either have to approve it or deny it, and if you, whatever you do, either approving or denying it, you have to apply the variance criteria.
And I
You
don't,
have to make specific written findings related to those criteria.
yeah, I think they're talking about, do they have to do that tonight? And they're certainly not prepared to
Right,
do
right.
either a formal approval or denial tonight.
Okay.
So I would think that they give us direction about which resolution to prepare that we put on the agenda for the next meeting.
And I would make that motion to deny the request and prepare that resolution for our next meeting.
Okay. I'll second that. Any other discussion having to do with that?
I want to just modify that a little bit if you're willing to direct us to prepare a resolution of denial rather than deny the request.
Oh, yes, prepare, yes, with the understanding that it would be acted on at our next meeting.
Yeah, okay.
Okay. Words matter, Tim.
That way you'll have a chance to actually look at the findings that we draft up, and you'll be able to modify them if you think they need to be modified, and, you know, all that kind of stuff, before you actually do anything.
Okay, any further discussion? So we have a motion to prepare a resolution as suggested. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Okay. There we go.
Sorry, Mason.
Oh, it's all right. I'm just a lawyer.
Yeah,
I don't
right.
have any stake in it.
Yeah, it's a sticky wicket, it is. So, okay. So the last thing we got on here, we have an MOU for the change in healthcare coverage for the city employees. So the memorandum of understanding, as it shows here, summarizes the changes that we're talking, moving from the Northeast Service Cooperative blah, 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 VIVA plan, which is the one that we've been operating underneath for quite a while, which has all of our employees being in their own pool, but has an additional protection based on the region, and to the Public Employees Insurance Program, which is statewide and does not calculate all of our rates based on our own individual pool. So the articles go through the reduction in benefits and how much we're going to put it in there and when we're going to put money into their HSAs. As we discussed in previous meetings, the savings to the employees and to the city at the same level of risk to the employees is pretty significant. The union voted on this and they agreed to approve it, and so now our job is to follow through and approve the memorandum of understanding so that we can start getting everybody signed up, right?
Well, we've already started getting everybody signed up, so I really hope you do.
I'd make a
You've already-
motion, I'd make a motion to approve the health insurance memorandum of understanding.
Okay, so there's a motion. Is there a
Second.
second? Motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I want to just make a little clarification. This reduction in benefits makes it sound kind of nasty.
It's not really.
It's a reduction in benefits in the sense that the plan that we're providing costs less to them and to us.
Right.
It's not a reduction in the benefits that they're receiving. As a matter of fact, we made sure that this program provides the exact same level of risk for the employees at a much reduced cost. So I just want to make sure that's clarified.
No taken. Any further discussion?
Nice job.
Yeah, it's exciting. In a boring yet exciting
Well,
sort of
and I
way.
think
Yeah, boring to the tune
Mike
of
and
a few
Kim
tens
worked
of
on this
thousands of dollars a year.
Right.
went out and did some exploring and found it
Yeah,
and introduced it to Jay and I, and it makes total sense. So I thank you guys for your work
Yep.
because
it's going to
You know,
save.
it's
Save the employees and
it's
the
saving
city
the
a lot of money.
employees, which to me is really important. But it again is also saving the city, and so I think it's just a total win-win. And I thank you both for your time and efforts on this.
Great. So we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
Jay's going, shut up.
Great, Jay.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries.
I got that.
Okay, great. 7:12. All right, so we're going to go to staff staff and council reports. Anton, you're up.
I had a EDA meeting yesterday evening or afternoon, and I had to leave early. But one of the things that we brought up, and I maybe had put my foot in my mouth a little bit now, but they were going to seek IRRB funding through the EDA for some of the streetscape work with the Highway 61 project. And there was a bunch of things attached to it as far as when it needed to start from the time the money was awarded to when it had to be done, as well as there was then if you qualified for any of the previous 2 fiscal years not being eligible for additional funding. And I didn't really quite understand because Mary didn't really come in with a real it wasn't clear like what exactly it was for. I mean, it's for city beautification or downtown beautification. I mean, it's the perfect complement to like where we're looking for funding for the Highway 61 project with lights but it wasn't very clear. So we made a modified motion on that, that once she got some more details, of course it has to be in by the end of November. And I talked to Mike, and he had actually talked to Mary about that. So then I was like, oh, shoot. So, anyway,
Lots of fast-moving things.
There's lots of
Totally
fast-moving
understandable
things.
If there wasn't enough information for folks to get on board with that.
and it wasn't just me. We all felt a little bit uncomfortable with how exactly that time frame and timetable would work. And, again, so that's being adjusted, I think, and dealt with so she can get that submitted. And that would go, it was a $50,000 grant. So, it won't take care of any one thing, but it'll help offset something in that project and free up other dollars for us to use. And that is kind of it. I got reelected by one vote, and so there's a recount tomorrow
Tomorrow at 9.
at 9 a.m. at the courthouse, so bring your popcorn. 770 people voted, so. Anyway, so we'll see. I appreciate everybody's support, and I talked to Craig the next day for probably a couple hours, actually, and, it was good. It was a really good conversation.
Yeah.
And he had a good, we had, both of us, I think, would agree it was a good conversation, and if I still end up winning by one vote after the recount tomorrow, then he's promised to stay involved and show up to stuff and
Great.
actually reach out if he has questions or, so that's what I know.
Great. Tim?
We had a public utilities meeting today. Just an update, the PUC is starting to install its smart meters, automated, what?
Advanced metering.
Advanced metering
infrastructure.
infrastructure, yes. These are electric meters that we're going to go on roughly 100 properties in the city. It's part of a pilot project, first phase of our converting all of our metering system into this. So the first meters went in yesterday or today, and
Yeah.
we'll be putting more in as time allows, and we'll be gathering data and trying to start to figure out how we're going to use this system.
So do all news services get those?
No, we're trying, it's a mesh network, so we're trying to build it out so that it always can
Yeah.
use what's already been there, so
Okay.
if they're located in a good place, then yes, if not, we can always come back and switch it out pretty easily, so there's nothing that has to happen differently on the building.
No.
Patrick's
great.
got a press release, so we're gonna get the word out just kind of broadly that the project is going on. We'll also be contacting property owners individually when we intend to switch it out. And we'll do a few more communications, just kind of hey, what's going on and why is this a good thing? And there's a lot of good reasons why this is a good thing.
Does it mean dual fuels back on the table?
It will put dual fuel back on the table, yeah. That's
Sweet.
one of the big, to be able to do load management again, both for customers and for the system's cost savings is a big deal.
Awesome.
Will it be on the webpage then, information on our webpage?
Yeah, we can do that.
Because I'm trying to tell people to look there a lot. When people say, we don't know, go to the website and look, please.
Yeah, there's a lot more information on the homepage of the website than there used to be, like a lot more information.
My phone number and address are still not on there, or my email address. You,
That's quite a look.
He seems like perhaps he doesn't believe that to be true.
Maybe he's
I
waiting to
just
see if
looked.
it's supposed to really be you, but you're here
Oh
till
yeah, good
December.
point.
Yeah,
Wait till,
we'll deal with
don't
that
change it till
tomorrow
after
afternoon.
tomorrow.
So just the last thing with the Public Utilities Commission, we talked about setting rates for 2019. We haven't done that. Will probably happen at our December meeting, but we're looking at a 2% sewer rate increase and 0% increases for water and electric for 19. So we feel pretty good about that, and we'll, once we've had a chance to kind of digest the information we received, we'll take action on it, but it's going to have to happen in December, so, our next meeting.
Great.
That's all I have.
Kelly?
I will have a YMCA meeting Monday. I brought, because I said last time, and I know we're trying to run, I brought some different type of forms, because, again, I think that before the end of the year, we should do the administrator evaluation
Yep.
by the council. When we do that, that will be a closed meeting, because it's personnel, correct, Chris?
What's up to me, actually?
Oh, because it's your choice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh. Okay. Well, I always think.
Chris didn't say anything.
I think personnel should be, but that's my own thought. So I brought these, if you guys want to go through them even after we're done, just to kind of take a look.
No, we can't
Whether-
go through them after we're done.
Oh,
I mean, we can, but we have to do it
you can
separately.
take a look at these anyway and see if there's something that works or that we should do, because I think for the last meeting of the year, we should be able to do that for Mike.
Or do you want to have Mike or Patrick just take these and send them out to us, and we can?
Do you have
Be happy
four?
to do
Do you have
that.
4
There.
copies of those?
That-
I don't have copies.
So I
We'll
mean,
take care
we're
of
not
it.
going to get a chance to digest them by passing them around, so.
I'm wondering, are we going to have another budget work session where we do anything?
We're gonna have to.
So what, the first meeting in December is when we'll do the public hearing to talk about what the budget looks like,
Okay.
truth of taxation, so to speak.
Are we going to do anything before then to kind of work on
We'll give you
things?
an update of where we're at the next meeting, because most of the bigger changes have actually happened now, but really just now. And then you can decide if there are still some things that are in the
Okay.
mix. And I suspect there's going to be one or two issues you probably want
Okay.
to chat about.
Another last silly thing, but came across Facebook
No silly thing.
and started the conversation. It's actually, and they had a good point. It's on the Marais sell and swap, so if people belong to it, they could see it. But asking about the fact that we have pallets sitting on city streets with things, and now as we have winter showing up and people with trailers and all that on city streets, are we going to do anything about it before the plowing season starts? Okay, I'm a little biased, knowing who I'm married to, that I'm sure he would appreciate it, but it was
Understandable.
actually not him, not anybody from his department that brought it up and went, why is this occurring? So considering it's the public, I thought I would bring that up, and maybe we should take a look at least sending out letters telling people that they have, I don't know, whether it's 2 weeks, 30 days, whatever, to get these things moved.
We do have our survey done anyway of the things that are out there. So, we can send
On the
out
streets?
letters. Yeah.
Or- okay.
And in the yards. But in this particular instance, I know what you're talking about.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So we can have that done before we meet again in a couple weeks.
We sure can.
Awesome. Thank you very much. I will probably comment back to that.
It
Letters.
got taken off.
Letters will be going out. Oh, did it?
I already responded to all that stuff, because it's my project.
I didn't even get to read it. That's why I couldn't read stuff.
Yep. It's all gone tomorrow, because they finished today, which is what I explained. So,
Okay.
yeah.
I don't think it was
It
just
was.
that one, but
We don't have
There's
a
a bunch of other
policy
things.
about stuff like that. Our practice usually is for anybody's construction project, we're very patient with the way they use the streets. There's oftentimes a large dumpster that'll be in front of somebody's property when they're doing construction, it'll be in the street. A lot of cities have regulations about that, it needs to be permitted, they have safety rules. We don't have anything like that here. We will often allow construction vehicles to be parked in the streets or even operate in the streets. As long as it's not causing trouble. That it's about time, though, I think, that this one is, the plowing season is going to be a very good motivator to get that stuff going.
okay. That's it for me.
Great. Well, I got reelected too.
Oh, I'm
So
like,
did
yeah.
you? So we look forward to.
Yes,
I know
did.
you did. When I saw that,
I'm
I
sorry.
was
I'm
just
not
like, she's
being-
gonna rub that in
Not
so
bad.
much. Biggest vote getter in the city, right?
The girl.
Well, no
Yeah.
duh. I knew that we needed at least one.
Least one large
At
boy.
least one.
Actually, I'm not like that, but yeah, since you
No, it's
Seems like
good.
I
you
just
are.
said that.
It's great.
Wait.
Oh, you just were.
Seems like
But, anyway, so I have yet to talk with Hunky, Ray, whoever you want to call him, about like to have the conversation like what you had with Greg. But I intend to do that, and as one of the things that I can do to address some of the concerns about transparency is to start writing that Marais mayor blog again. I did that for about the first 3 years, and then when I opened a bike shop, it kind of just fizzled with my time. So I'm going to reinvest time in that and make sure that I can write up a summary of the city council meetings and other meetings that we have, so that that information can be out there in public as well. Not this week, but the previous week, I wrote a proclamation. I don't do this very often, but I wrote a proclamation for the cross-country team because they went to state. Both the girls and the boys teams went to state for the second year in a row, which is pretty awesome. And the boys ended up getting 9th, and the girls ended up getting 15th in state, which is pretty incredible. But I also got a little pushy with the mayor of Two Harbors because it's a joint team between Grand Marais and Two Harbors. And so when I gave the team my proclamation, I said, you guys have to get on your mayor and tell him to pick up the slack here, and he's got to do one of these too. And I think that he did, which is really good. But I'll throw that out there. And I know in the past I've done I did a proclamation for the volleyball team when they went, because that was just really inspiring. and I was really hoping for the football team this year that I get to write another one. But in the past, we also have had like the Knowledge Bowl team and some of these other academic teams that have gone to state and that have done incredibly well. And so from this point moving forward, if any state or if any team at the school qualifies for state, they're going to get a proclamation. So,
Wonderful.
So that's some motivation for the kids up at the school. Do it. You can have your own day in the city of Grand Marais. Be really
Key
great.
to the city.
Do they get to
Oh,
go out
yeah.
and dancing in the streets and stuff?
Well, I mean, it'll
Should
definitely.
do that every day.
We can.
We used to
you
do
know,
that for homecoming, snake dance.
snake dance.
Yeah.
Tell me after the meeting.
So you kids go, yeah!
So meetings I went to, there was a creative economy meeting that talked a lot about design features for the Highway 61. Some great conversation. I believe that they will be preparing some suggestions for the council that we should have within the next couple of meetings for design elements that, you know, I was very clear with them that there's a budget to be stuck to here, and they were very receptive to that. Some of the designs that they looked at were really cool. I think have some really great, some good possibilities of being really cool and fitting into a lot of the aesthetic that we have around town. You know, like combinations of wood and metal and things like that. That metal that burnishes really, really well, and you know, wood that'll age with a lot of weather, you know, which I think it'll be cool. I don't know exactly where they settled because I had to leave that meeting early, but some of the concepts that they looked at were really good, I thought, and also they looked at some designs for the entryway to the park, to the campground, and some redesigns on that make it a little bit less conspicuous, but also gets the message out there really well and ties it into the community connection. I'm sure that, you know, Jonathan was at that meeting too. He'd probably give a more thorough update on it. But that was a great conversation. Other than that, I've been having a lot of conversations one-on-one with people around town. Encourage anybody, if they ever want to, you know, chat with me, just come up and say hi and go ahead and do that, because it's good for me to hear. It's good stuff. But other than that, I don't really have anything else. You guys?
I had one other quick question, now that I think of
remembered
it.
something. Yeah.
Why can't we have the beavers or the DNR or somebody
Trap
trap
'em?
the beavers and remove them? As they were talking, and I didn't get to hear it all because I was at work the other day, talking about the issue and where they're coming into and the property and to wrap trees. How far up are we going to wrap trees, or are people expected to wrap trees before we deal with these?
I think they're a protected species, like protected shore species, aren't they?
No, you can trap beavers.
In Lake Superior?
I don't think the DNR is going to do that. Anytime we've talked to DNR staff about animal issues, trapping or removing or anything like that has not been the tactic that they've wanted
Can the
to
city
use.
hire someone to trap and relocate them?
I think so.
A bounty.
Well, I have
We
no
don't wanna
doubt.
do
I
that.
have no doubt we have many
Like
people who
beavers
would.
from everywhere.
I have no doubt there are people who would trap and sell the
Oh,
pelts.
there are
but,
so many
Well,
people around here who know how to do that.
Yeah.
We'll look into it and see what options we've got.
Talk to the
about
park board
that.
about that.
Well, the park board, I think they have talked about it.
Yeah, I kind of felt like out of the interview, that wasn't an option, and I'm thinking, why are we not talking this? And maybe it has been, but just with the destruction, and I noticed it one day just past, before Birch Terrace in the big wooded lot
Oh my
there.
God! They
And I
crossed
went-
61 and started nipping trees down.
Well, and then they were talking
It's
about
unreal.
in front of Java Moose and moving further, and I'm like, why are we like, and they're like, well, we're just keep wrapping your trees, people, and I'm like, no, that's not a solution.
Well, and if you go back, so I always take my son down on walks on the western lighthouse and on the rocks and the riprap down in there.
Yep.
And if you get around the back side of the Public Works building back there, it
I have
looks
no
like
doubt.
a moonscape. Because they, like, those beavers have cut down everything. And then there's not a lodge, it's like a mansion. Like,
Where on
it's
the,
an enormous.
so not
beaver
only
dam.
did they have one built at the Coast Guard station, but now they've got one on the west side, and now somebody said they're actually doing it right in the marina by the Yordas. Yeah, I think we need to do something.
Beaver sprawl?
Dave said that they had set traps, but then somebody had gone out and tripped all the traps.
Well, if, I get people are gonna not want them dead, so I'm fine,
There are ways
but
to
then
trap
let's
them.
relocate them.
There are
Let's trap
ways to
them and
trap 'em.
relocate them.
Yeah.
They need to go. That's it. That's my spiel, my speech.
Okay. Anything else? All right, we are adjourned.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, Chris. Thank you.